lunch, but on steroids. So we'll see.
Yeah, we're competing with that.
Yeah, we're gonna can.
Oh yeah. I got you covered. I know we actually have someone watching from Thailand right now, which is pretty cool. So, I don't know. Do you want to get started, or do you want to wait, or what do you want to do? There's water here too. If you guys are thirsty, I know it gets hot in here.
Water's good for me.
You got the roll, sir.
That's good.
Let me just turn. Yeah. Let me just tell you guys a little bit how we were thinking this was going to work. Is basically, we don't want to do like a presentation, so this is just kind of like a little Q&A. John's got a really good story about how he became the John Zogby, I guess, right? And I guess
John Zogby.
John Zogby
was already being used on Twitter, so it became
the John Zogby. So we'll kind of talk about that stuff. But this is not. This is all is open. So this is your chance to ask John anything that you wanted to ask him. Are predictions for the election on the table or off the table today?
They're on the table, but they're meaningless.
Okay. Okay, good to know. So I didn't know if you're willing to give out political.
No, this is just for entertainment.
Just for entertainment. Okay. Sounds good. And then let me just tell you guys a little bit about thINC for those of you guys that have never been here before. So this is a small business accelerator and incubator, and we work with students and teams that want to get businesses off the ground here in the Mohawk Valley. And this is a place that they can come to meet clients and meet other creatives and hold events, and it's kind of just like a community co-working thinking space. And so we're hoping to expand. We actually are expanding. We're not hoping to expand. We're going to be moving to the Export East in the spring, which will take us from what you see here, 1,500 square feet, to 8,500 square feet. So hopefully we will be the magnet for startups and entrepreneurships in not just our area, but the region. So hopefully we can poach some folks from out of the area and start some cool companies. So that's the 30-second spiel. I'm getting better at the stump speech at this point. So do I have to give you a bio? I mean, everyone knows who you are, right?
Yeah, those who don't know, I don't have to hear. So just, let's go.
All right, so why don't we start with your background? So where did you grow up? Where'd you go to college? That kind of stuff. Because are you a Utica person?
I'm a Utica boy, yeah. Rutger Millgate Street, so East Utica. I'm a veteran of Mary Street Playground, which is next to St. Anthony Little League, where I learned pretty much everything, except at the other end of my mother used to use a fly swatter to hit us up, one of those old wire ones. So between that and Mary Street Playground, that's the school of hard knocks. I went to St. Agnes School, Notre Dame, High School, Lemoyne, and Syracuse University.
Okay.
All history.
So there was no statistics or politics?
I got a D in statistics my freshman year at Lemoyne, and in fact, I told that story. In 2000, I got the Distinguished Alumni Award, and 5 years later, I was testifying as an expert witness in an anti-Walmart case, and some young hotshot attorney said, would you mind telling everyone what your grade in statistics was in college? And I said, well, since I was the source, yeah, I don't mind at all. But I said, I rehabilitated myself. So I'll be okay.
What was, kind of growing up, what were the kinds of things that you were interested in, when you were really young before college? And I guess this was the question is, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Sports. I just gave up the dream that the Yankees would call. Just left it maybe a couple of years ago. Still hoping to ride the bench as the bullpen catcher. Sports statistics. My father passed away early. My mother indulged my brother and me with almanacs and sports almanacs and encyclopedias, and so we were voracious going through those and sharing statistics, and Brooklyn Dodgers and the old Boston Celtics and so on. What did I want to be? I don't know. I don't know. Not a pollster though. I know that. And in fact, when I got through college, what I wanted to teach. And I was the luckiest man on the face of the earth. It's hard to believe. The unlucky day was when the first draft, Vietnam draft, it was our congressman, Alexander Perney, picked out the numbers. Mine was 49, which meant that I'd be gone in about a week or so. And so I sat down, this was a Monday, and I wrote 3 letters. One to Notre Dame, one to St. Francis de Sales, and one to Utica Catholic Academy, and said, I'm available to teach. I sent the letter on a Monday, and Wednesday I got a letter back. These were the old days. I mean, that was very rapid. God bless you, said the principal, Sister Carol at St. Francis. We're expanding from an all-girls school. We're admitting boys. We need a male social studies teacher. And I went in the next day, and I was hired. And that's what I wanted to do. I took my education courses ex post facto, finished a master's degree part-time while I was teaching. I did 4 years at St. Francis, and then I was bumming around the South. 1974, I left St. Francis to go work full-time on my PhD. That summer, a buddy of mine from college, we bummed around the South for about 3.5 weeks and came back late August of 74, and I was getting prepared to move to Syracuse to work, to study full-time. And there was a call from a colleague of mine at MVCC saying this brand new school, SUNY, is looking for an adjunct professor of history, and they've been trying to get you for about 3 weeks now. Now there were, remember, there no faxes, no answering machines, no nothing. And so 2 days later, my 26th birthday, I was teaching 3 history courses at SUNY. And it was very fortuitous. I was a college teacher now, all of a sudden, working on a PhD, and stalking one of my older students who became my wife 39 years ago. Can I go now?
Yeah.
That's pretty much the end of the story.
So then how did you, when you first got the gig teaching at, was it Notre Dame or DeSales or?
DeSales.
DeSales. So they hired you, I mean, in 2 days?
2 days.
And had you ever taught social studies before?
No, I was graduating from college.
Was this what just kind of happened? Was this kind of the process before? Or?
I don't know, but I was damn lucky, wasn't it?
Oh my God! I just know like so many people that are teachers that can't.
Now look, I was making $5,000 a year, which was terrible in 1970.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but when I told the guys on campus, they were 1970. In the late 60s, we weren't worried. Even us liberal arts majors, the economy had been booming. You're going to get a job. Well, they're struggling to get a job. Zogby, you got a job? You're really going to teach? You lucky SOB. Well, I was very lucky. I was right place at the right time.
Okay. So then you were at SUNY.
I loved it too. 4 years of total happiness. I made, I remember the checks were coming in. Some days, some weeks, it would be like $99.87. And other weeks it would be 101. And I didn't care. No, I was teaching. That was fun.
So you're a PhD student at SUNY. Did you finish the PhD?
PhD at Syracuse. No, I am what is known among academics as an ABD, all but dissertation. I was doing, I've passed all of my exams with honors. I was doing a dissertation in American history, and Jonathan Zogby was born. And I had other priorities too. I was deeply involved in consumer left-wing politics. And I also knew that at that point in time, my full-time gig was at MVCC, and I knew that the PhD wasn't going to happen. But it wasn't going to get me anywhere, and so I prepared a different sort of career for me. Continued teaching until I found another opening.
So what was that other opening? Continue teaching, and then what?
I ran for mayor of Utica, something that no one remembers and shouldn't. I came in third place out of 3, and I ran against an incumbent mayor, Steve Polinka, and a perennial candidate by the name of Lula Pola. That was Lula Pola 1.0. This was 6.0 this time. And I was the left-wing candidate in the race. I got 16% of the vote. And with my MVCC students, we got together with a fellow who has since become very famous, best student I ever had. Maybe you know this name, Peter Pry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Peter, I taught him 7 courses at Zoom. 7 courses. Peter coordinated my MVC students, and we did 3 polls. And I kept coming up in a 3-way race, 16%. And on election day, I got 16%. Oh man, I'd rather be right than president. You know, that was Calvin Coolidge. And so after the election, I caught the attention of Ralph Nader. And some of the people who funded Ralph Nader, some prominent Arab Americans, Bill Mansour and Jim Abarisk, and we met in Detroit, and they hired me. For 3 years, I was the national field representative for the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee. Went to over 100 cities, 31 states. I was the organizer and the spokesman for the group. I met people all over the country, and in September 10th of '84, we had our last philosophical difference with the chairman of the board. We wanted to stay, and he wanted us fired, and that's a joke, but it was true. And anyway, 9 of us were fired, and September 12th, I started John Zogby and Associates, half of which was a lie.
So can I back you up for a second about the election? Because even in the discussions we've had, I didn't know you ran. What did you learn from running in local politics? What did you learn from that race?
It is exhilarating. Oh, running, it really is.
And would you recommend it, I guess, is the other thing.
Sure, I mean, if you have no concept of self-pride, then absolutely go out there. Nothing can be, you go out there. I knocked on so many doors, and you knocked on 100 doors in a day, and 90 people would be very polite and very nice, and thanks for coming by, goodbye. And 7 people would slam the door in your face and say they'd call the police, and 3 would invite you to dinner, and you'd get home, and honey, man, I had 3 dinners tonight, they love me. So there's a selective screening, that goes on, but I love the science and the mechanics of politics. That to me is, running a campaign, working on a campaign, that's, kind of like the ultimate entrepreneurial experience, getting together a team, having a goal in mind, whether you achieve it or not, the process itself is wonderful. And frankly, I'll tell you that I became, I think, a fairly good consultant by running and losing on a local level. If I had run and won, I would have no idea and no experience, but I ran and lost, and right before me was everywhere where I screwed up. And so then you become a consultant. And you say, don't do this because you'll lose.
That's how it still works now.
That's how it works, yeah, lose. Run and lose.
What were a couple
Hear
of
that,
things?
Thailand?
What were a couple of things you were trying, like you were running on? What were a couple, back then, what were you trying to accomplish?
Well, basically I was for the municipalization of water power. So we wanted a feasibility study. We wanted the city to own the water company as it once had. I had written a book called Utica 2000. I wrote it actually after the campaign, but it was based on the platform, and it called for urban gardening and vertical gardening and a whole bunch of things, of people's downtown, of shops and cafes, a lot of things that you see. It only took 35 years.
Better late than never.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but it was. I was very proud of the manuscript. Had no idea where it is, but I was very proud of that book.
So we can go back to now. You decided, okay, you founded Zogby and Associates, right? Half of which was a lie. So it was just you.
Mm-hmm.
And what was your first? Who was your first paying customer? And how did you decide that I can do this?
Well, I told you I was fired September 10th. Of 1984, and so I flew home, and I asked, a very basic question, what the hell am I going to do? And I called, my Arab American organization tilted to the left. There was one that tilted to the right, and I was very close to the chairman of the board, a fellow named Sam Phillips, who was in the Boston area and a Forbes 400 guy at the time. And so I called Sam, and I told him I was fired. He said, come on down to Washington. He said, let's talk. So I went down, and Sam was the prototype billionaire. He's the guy who was staying at the Four Seasons. And we were having dinner at the Four Seasons, and interestingly enough, Vice President Bush was in the corner with Barbara and Secret Service. I'm there with Sam Phillips. I'm the guy in the room who has 37 cents in my pocket. And Sam is this amazing fellow who can just make money like that. Somebody called him over to the table, and he went and talked to them. This is while we're having dinner, and he came back. He said, I just made $1 million having dinner with you. Is good, John. So he said, how much do I have to pay you? And I gave him an outrageous figure. And he said, okay, I'm going to pay you out of a company of mine, E.B. Kingman Plastics in Leominster, Massachusetts. And you're going to be my political consultant. I said, what do I do? He said, I got some candidates. I want you to raise money for you. So I went home, started John Zogby and Associates, did a DBA. It's embarrassing how much I was making and how much I was spending out of that. But anyway, I was his fundraiser, and got a little office. I was working out of my home, but I had a 3-year-old at the time. I remember I was talking to the chairman of the board of Bechtel Corporation in San Francisco, trying to raise some money for a congressional candidate, and Jeremy was, Dad, shh, Jeremy, Dad. I said, I think I better get an office. So I went down. You know where Tiny's is? Little steel building next. Make a long story short, or a much longer story, longer story. I opened up the office. Sam Phillips died at the age of 52. 10 weeks later, I got a call about 6:45 in the morning. And I remember saying to my wife, Jesus, I have 997 business cards that say John Zogby and Associates. What the hell am I supposed to do now? And so I started pounding the pavement. And right before Christmas, you know Michael Arcuri, Congressman? His
got an
dad,
office 2 doors down now.
yes, he does, yeah. His dad, Carmen, well, anybody know Carmen? Carmen was one of the finest gentlemen on this earth. Carmen was kind of a mentor to me for a long time. I went to lunch at Tiny's with Carmen, and he said, "How are you doing?" I said, "Oh, she's great." He said, "No, you're not." He said, "I could see it in your eyes. You're not doing anything, are you?" I said, "No, that's pretty perceptive, Carmen." So he said, "We need a whole bunch of studies done at the Utica Transit Authority." That was my first big local client. I did some mayoral campaigns here locally and local campaigns, but
Was this a case of, so take the transit studies, was this a case of, you obviously didn't have a business partner, you didn't have funding, but was this a case of fake it till you make it, or did you actually know what you were doing at that time? Like for the transit studies, do you know how to execute that, or was that something you were just like, yep, I'll take it and I'll figure it out?
well, look, I went to school, you know, I mean, it's a fair enough question. And I was nimble, and nothing makes you more nimble than need, you know, but I had an educational background. Could I do studies? Yeah, you know, I did polls in my own race. I had done some polls that validated, you know, other elections. And so when it came to basic ridership surveys, I knew all about random sampling, you know, and hiring students, you know, and I also, in all honesty, I went to the library and got out every book, how to do surveys, how to do polls, you know, that was before the For Dummies series, you know, but I read and read voraciously, yeah. And so now, is there an element of fake it till you make it? Absolutely. I'd be a liar if I said that it wasn't. And it's, with all respect, the same as making the greatest roast beef sandwiches downtown. Here. You're kind of putting a formula together, aren't you? And see what flies. I'm not picking on you. I'm using, but you happen to make the best roast beef sandwiches downtown.
So you started the transit studies. Who was your first hire, and what did you look for in your first hire?
Well, earlier than that, there actually was an associate, Rick Blehart. Rick was kind of a jack of all trades, kind of a scholar and hands-on guy, gone to Harvard. He was home, meaning Clinton, and he was between jobs. And we dreamed together projects. We did out-of-pocket projects. You have to have a demo. You know, that's a very important thing. You have to have some sort of a demo. And we put together proposals. We pounded the pavement. And he was my first hire. And then, because I had taught really at all the local colleges, as jobs came in, I selected, you know, good buddies who were specialists in various things.
How big did Zogby and Associates get? Because there was Zogby and Associates and there's Zogby International.
Yep.
Now there's Zogby Analytics.
That's right.
So what was the trajectory, and so where did you go from Zogby and Associates? How big did that get before it became international?
Zogby and Associates was about, well, it was exactly 5 people. We had moved to Genesee Street and then out to a little cabin in Clinton, 5 full-time people, but then we had a call center. And then with the call center, the payroll then, you know, would be 75, 80, 90 folks, well into the 90s. 94 election was a major turning point. 96 election was the turning point, reasons I'll get into in a second. By the late 90s, it is now Zogby International, both in terms of the name and in terms of our global reach. And we are at about 450 employees. So it's 60 full-time and the rest call center employees.
So Why were those elections the turning points?
Well, here's the lesson. I think starting in '87, when there were only 5 of us, I decided we were going to have an annual strategic planning meeting. And we would hole up first in my office, and then each year there'd be more. It was kind of a doubling trajectory. And we would plot out what we were going to do for the next year, what the goals were. So 91, I decided, well, let me back up. 87, I decided somebody's got to go up and study the Camp Drum area, Fort Drum area, the only growth area in upstate New York. And so we went up there, Rick and I, and essentially put together a consortium of organizations to do population, demographic, ethnographic studies. It became a major industry for us and a tremendous help to them. And word got out in others. We started doing community studies all over the place. That was a strategic planning meeting. In 91, we met. These would be after the election. So after the elections of 91, I decided all there was in New York was the Marist poll. And New York was big enough to have a second poll, so we launched the Zogby poll. And by that time, it became just easy. I did an out-of-pocket poll, early December. It showed at that point in time that George H.W. Bush would beat Mario Cuomo in New York State. So we sent out a news release. It not only was headlines all over New York, but CNN picked it up as a lead story. And it was the morning that it came out, December 6th, 1991, was the morning of the afternoon that Mario Cuomo was supposed to fly out to New Hampshire to file to run for president. In the 1992 election, it decided not to, and the Zogby poll was given credit for that. Yeah, wow. And so 94, we're now polling for Rupert Murdoch, the early Fox network, and the New York Post, and everybody's got Mario Cuomo beating George Pataki. We have Pataki ahead, and Pataki won. And then 96, by this time I'm polling for Reuters, largest news agency in the world, and we're getting not only all the presidential primaries right, but the main election. Here's what happened. We had a much closer race. Everybody had Clinton beating Dole by 15, 18, 20 points. We have it at 6, 7, 8. So it was a question of not only David positioning himself so far away from Goliath, but Goliath was attacking David. And there were by this time now you have Fox and MSNBC and CNN and a lot of news media, and they're beating the hell out of this little guy. Who the hell does he think he is? And on election night, I'm right, to the 10th%. And can I share the funny story? I'm having lunch in New York on election day with a cousin of mine, and the 4th beer, he says, "You got TV to do tonight." I said, "Yeah, I know, but I'm a wreck. I could be selling pencils at this time tomorrow." So I get back to my hotel, the Hilton. Reuters is right down the street, and I'm going to be doing TV all night for Reuters. And I made a phone call. I called the Hotline. Now, the Hotline was this publication that came out before all this constant news, and it was the only one that would have the exit polls that would show at that time what the results were going to be. So I called Bob Balkin, the editor of Hotline, and I said, "What do you got from the exit polls?" He said, 49, 41, 8. That's what I had. I said, "Holy shit." he said, "You're going to be saying that a lot." I got off the phone and I said, "Oh my God, oh 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 my God." I went out into the hallway. There was a Filipino housekeeper in the hotel. And here's this grown man jumping up like Ed Grimley, Martin Short's character. "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." So I called Reuters. You know, Reuters is a British news agency. And I called Alan Elsner, and he said, "We have Zogby on the line." And in the background, I could hear, "Here, here, here, here." He said, "As you could tell, we're mighty ecstatic here." That's how they get ecstatic. And so, there you go. So 96 was kind of big.
So then when you get a big win like that, how does that affect the trajectory of the business? I mean, did that change everything?
Everything. Everything. I mean, we laid groundwork and we had infrastructure, and we did these annual meetings, but everything.
And were you prepared for it? I mean,
that's a very good question. The short answer was, for the most part, yes, because I was thinking that the possibility could come, and I had experienced some steady growth. You know, I mean, going from out-of-pocket polls to Murdoch, you know, was certainly one trajectory. But then Murdoch to Reuters was another trajectory. Now, after Reuters, everybody's calling, not only for comments, but people are calling for business. And, you know, simultaneous to all of this, I told you about my left-wing background. I become kind of this poster child for Rush Limbaugh. And every day, the Zogby poll, the Zogby, I couldn't possibly have bought that kind of publicity. And on top of it, that the day after the election, all the other pollsters are sniping and saying, "Oh, Zogby got lucky." And Limbaugh is saying, "Since when does the guy who got it right have to explain himself to everybody else who got wrong?" It was a perfect storm. But to answer your question then, it became a brand name for accuracy. So now what do I have to do? I have to prepare for the next wave of hiring. I have to prepare for the next wave of structure. But I also have to understand and think ahead that I'm not always going to be the most accurate. You know, I would do that 5, 6, 7 more years, but one of these days, the mighty will fall. You're going to get one wrong, and they're going to pounce. So now, the strategic planning, as we get into the turn of the millennium, is going to be the smartest pollsters. And then, after that, prepare yourself for the world of analytics, which I'm very proud of the fact that we did.
How did you, because some of the other, you know, and I'm not familiar with the other kind of polling agencies, right, that they're the large ones, but how important do you think it was for you to be the face of your organization? Do you think it mattered?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do, because I know that a couple of things really quick. One of the things that I did right from the get-go was I created a fake RFP. This was in 1985, and I went on the phone and I called Gallup and Harris and Roper, and I said, "I've got this job," and I gave the specs, and I said, I need a proposal. And 4 to 6 weeks later, I got the proposals. So conclusion number one is, Zogby, we're going to get the job done before you get the proposal from Gallup. That was important. Number two, I'd go out and I'd say, to a client or a prospect, "Have you ever met Mr. Deloitte or Mr. Touche? How about Mr. Booz or Mr. Hamilton? How about, do you know John Lockheed?" So here I am. And especially after the polling did well and the brand became became a worldwide brand. When I would walk in, "Oh, Jesus, we didn't expect you, to come in." And the name was different. You know, it wasn't Smith,
right,
or something, the name always generated, oh, that's a different name. What kind of name is that? And now there was a face to go to.
Do you feel like, so this is going to sound like kind of a brown-nosing question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Because you're obviously very dynamic in front of crowds. You carry yourself very well, and I love whenever we get a chance to talk and have a beer. We always like that, and if not, how important do you think it is for a company to have someone that is charismatic at the head of the organization? Do you think it matters?
No. You build the organization around who you have, what you have. You know, if a person is more comfortable with small groups than large, build an organization around that, and that person should use his or her skills and talents in that regard. If a person is more of a right brain thinker than a left brain thinker, I mean, I don't consider myself, and because I'm not a statistician, I'm an historian. And so there's no sense of my going out there and saying, I'm the statistician. No, I'm the guy who knows how to hire the statistician, but I'm the guy who's going to tell you what it all means. So yeah, play with what you've got. But boy, if you have a dream, be persistent. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. And don't give up. There were many, many, many times, you know, oh God, I remember when the boys were little, you know, and I'm starting a business, and somebody would say, did you get a calling for this? I said, oh yeah, God called me and said, start a polling firm in Utica. Which God, you know? Not the God of love, I'll tell you that.
Can you tell us about, you're saying that eventually you're gonna swing and miss. Can you tell us about one of your big failures?
Which one? Yeah.
Well, maybe one that was maybe early on, or one that's and then one that's later.
No, the biggest one. No, if you're gonna screw up, make it big, huge. This is really ironic, because I did not believe George W. Bush was going to win re-election in 2004. Now, we kept polling for a reason that I'll explain to you a little later. But we kept polling right through until 1 o'clock in the afternoon election day. And the polling showed Bush 49.8, Kerry 48.4. 49.8, 48.4. Do you believe George W. Bush deserves to be reelected? 45% said yes. A majority said no. Is the country heading in the right direction? 44% said yes, 52% said no. So we're done, and I'm looking with our polling. And I've got a company that hires me every election day, a hedge fund. They want to know before the exit polls come. They want the edge, in other words. They want early information. So the exit polls start leaking out. And the exit polls were way off, but they showed Kerry winning. Showed Kerry winning big, in fact. And so I told my client, I don't know who's going to win. They said, you've got to pick. Because we hired you in 2000 and you couldn't tell us who won in 2000. I said, all right, Kerry is going to win. I didn't stop there. I posted it on my website. That was the day that 2 million visitors visited our website. And the good news, website didn't crash. I didn't. I went around 5 o'clock or so. I got a call. I was going to the Foreign Press Center. I briefed the foreign press every election since 1998. I'm in the car and I get a call, and the call said, congratulations. It was the New York Daily News, and we just got out of the room with Karl Rove. And Rove said, Zogby's right. And the Bush people are despondent. He said, congratulations, you had the guts to do that. And then I got a call from somebody close to Bob Schrum, who was the campaign manager for Kerry. He said, wow, we were following you, and I told Senator Kerry that you said he won. He was ecstatic. And then I turned my phone up because I was going into the foreign press. So I opened the phone afterward, and there were 13 calls. The first half were congratulations, USMV, and the other half were something happened. See, I'm going to tell you, to this day, I still think that Kerry won Ohio. I still do. But what I should never have done was call an election that was that close. I just shouldn't have done it. That was stupid.
What was the fallout from that? Was there any fallout?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I mean, in terms of the reputation, there's some tarnish. In terms of people who want to see you fail, it was wonderful for them. On the other hand, it really didn't hurt business at all. That stuff really just doesn't hurt business. 90% of our work is the private sector. And look, is a corporation going to shoot you because, it was 49.8 to 48.4. Guess what? Bush got 50.8 and Kerry got 48.4. That's pretty close, isn't it? When you're talking to 1,200 people, and a corporation or people who are realistic say, oh, that's pretty good. So you just have to be able to stomach the headlines, maybe be a little less ambitious too.
How did the conversion from Zogby National to Zogby Analytics, number one, how did that happen? How's the business changed? And number two, how has the rise of folks like Nate Silver, kind of the celebrity pollsters, or data guys, how has that affected?
Yeah. All right, so first of all, I sold my company. Financially, it was very good for me. It was not good for the business. And to make a very long story short, we got the company back. I still had a little bit of a non-compete to negotiate out of, but we got the company back, and my oldest son, owns and runs the company. We were going to change to analytics anyway, but this kind of gave it kind of a fresh kickstart. So Jonathan runs it. Oddly, for people who used to say, how do you run a global corporation out of Utica? My son runs it out of the Adirondacks in Lake Luzerne, New York. So, I mean, we've really changed. It's leaner, it's meaner, it's highly profitable, it's less labor intensive because of all the technology that we have in partnerships as opposed to hires. And so the business model is a sound one. The product is a good one. We still do polling, but the emphasis is on analysis. Okay. The finding the story, the picture, the trend, and so on. Inevitable, I think, that even as late as when I came into prominence in the 90s, there were 4, 5, 6 of us. By 2008, there were 26 published national polls. There's even more than that today. And there are these quants, the Nate Silvers of the world, and they have a place. And the place is, lots of data. I welcome all sorts of algorithms and formulas and capabilities of turning that data into something. But it's only one thing. And I emphasize that they analyze data we analyze people. You can't lose sight of that fact, that even though there is a science to what we do, we are surveying human beings, you know, with a range of emotions and opinions that can change and values. And so it's very important, I think, to, just as I learned my lesson about hubris in 2004, that folks that think that that analyzing pure data can get you to the promised land, I think we'll probably have a fall eventually. Yeah.
Do you think that, you know, you were saying earlier, let's go back to the Cuomo kind of dropping out of the race, and you kind of got credit for that, right? What do you think about the idea that can polls drive the narrative, and can polls drive the results of an election? You know what I mean? Because that obviously influenced his decision, that poll, whether or not, you know.
I honestly don't know if it did or not. I really don't. It seems like there were, you know, a number of factors.
But do you think that can happen? I mean, do you think that, you know, as people see some of the exit polls and it's not in their favor, they stay at home? Or do you have any thoughts about that?
You know, I have over the years. I think there's probably too much emphasis on polls. I think there's a lot of emphasis on not so good polls, and I think there's a complete misunderstanding of polls. You know, all we're really doing, should be doing, is taking a measurement of a moment in time. So, you know, so if I have to lose 20 pounds by November 9th, 2016, I'm not going to start getting on the scale on November 8th. You know, I'm probably going to get on every once in a while and say, well, how am I doing? How am I doing? What do I need to do? What do I have to tweak here, or what do I have to tweak there? That's all really that polls should be. Now, can polls have an impact? Yeah. I've had people tell me, I want to run for office, but you came out with a poll showing me down 77-7. Now I can't raise any money. Sorry, you know, but I'm probably doing you and some potential donors a very big favor, don't you think? You know, and if you don't like it, take your own poll, you know, and find out. And odds are it'll probably be somewhere around that 77-7. Yeah, it can have an impact in terms of fundraising. It can have an impact in terms of coverage. I mean, just watch what's going on today. Those polls better be right. Otherwise, some candidates are being done a tremendous disservice.
So two final entrepreneurial questions, because that's what I really wanted to kind of get to, and then I hope folks have some questions. But number one is, you looking back at your career, what advice would you give yourself right now if you were just starting out?
Number one, have a vision. You know, it's, you know, you had used the term, do you fake it till you make it? No, you have a vision. What is it that you really want to accomplish? That can be honed, you know, but at least have a start. Where do I fit? Do research. You know, a number of people come to me and say, I want to start this. Well, who's your competition? Oh, I really don't know. Find out who your competition is. Get a handle on them. Pretend, like I pretended, to go out and solicit and see how they handle things. Watch, you know, have good eyes and ears to see how other people are doing it and where they're missing out. And write. I'm a great believer in journaling. You know that term? Write. Just keep writing. No one ever died from trying to form ideas. Even if you think you don't have anything to say, force yourself. Doesn't have to be every day, but just keep that mind active and vibrant. Go back and read and find out, hey, you know, I wasn't so dumb. But just keep that mind active.
So two more, because I just thought of one that just came to mind, sorry. So one is, they're both kind of related. So you've done a lot of work on first globals.
Yes.
A term that you probably should explain to folks if they're not familiar with it, and millennials.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I see a lot of folks coming through, think they're in their early 20s, trying to figure their path out. And what advice would you give someone in terms of, you know, a millennial, right? What's the best way to go about creating opportunity for yourself? And then number two is, I guess would be the final question is, for the people that are out there that are potential mentors, what would you suggest they do to approach a potential mentor?
All right, first and foremost, I used the term before, to create opportunities, be nimble. You know, just for starters, consider your own resume and look at your resume through other lenses. Don't, you know, say, I took this course, I graduated from here, I did this job. Tell yourself, what did I really do? What did I accomplish? Beyond what I was supposed to do, did I save somebody some money? Did I resolve any conflicts? Did I help to make the place a better workplace? Did I work together well in a team? Did I contribute to the team? Did I dominate the team? Tell yourself what you did and what you're good at, and be prepared not only to develop that and hone that and tell your story, but be prepared to hone that story so that as a new opportunity comes up, be prepared to revise what you did. Oh, you know what, come to think of it, I guess when I was here, I did this too, and this fits into this next gig. Be nimble, be prepared to see the next gig, to find an opportunity, and to package yourself towards that opportunity. Don't package the opportunity towards yourself. Be good on your feet. That's why keep that mind active, typing, writing, you know. There was another part.
So how would you suggest someone approach a mentor?
That way. Here are ways not to approach a mentor, okay? I would like to be CLO of your company in 2 years. Not good. I really want to learn, and I'm prepared to start at the bottom, but I really want to learn your business. I want to learn business. I want to learn to be an artist. I want to follow an artist. I am curious. That's a word we don't use enough. Wake up every morning and say, I am curious. That sounds like a cliche. It really isn't, though. Keep that mind active. Rapid changes that are taking place. So many of us are thrust into a position of riding a bucking bronco. One of the nice things about being here, look at what's happening here. Just look at it, just feel it. Can't you just feel the vibrance, the change? Many of us never thought, honestly, we would live to see it. Now, everything is Midas. Everything is Midas. What a great opportunity it is to be curious and creative, to have people to follow around.
That's all I got. Do you guys have any questions for John?
Yes.
What was it like building your own business here in Utica? Were you ever tempted to take it out of the city for the convenience of your industry?
Well, I was, and remember, it's a completely different era. You know, when on one hand, everybody answered a landline telephone, you know, and on the other hand, you had to be labor intensive. And so I saw a lot of profit go down the drain hiring people. And it was not greatly appreciated in the early days to not be in New York or Washington. And so there were temptations to move to Washington. And fortunately, we had family here and children here, and we were happy here, and decided, you know, it took a toll in terms of traveling, but I was probably gonna be traveling anyway, might as well be able to come home to a place that we're happy with and familiar with. But then we I think did turn lemons into lemonade, because when it started to take off, when some people would call and say, now, I need something different. Do I want the, you know, garden variety pollster in Washington who's this narrow, or do I want somebody who's out there? And so I sort of became the guy who was out there. So it worked. You don't have to move, and not anymore. Look, my son is running a company from Lake Luzerne, New York. I mean, that's amazing.
John, in your early polling years, sounds as though that you've had many more successes than more wins than losses. Was that a result of the methodology as compared to it was more by design than just luck? And as you transition to the analytical side, is your methodology a little different, makes you a little more unique than someone else?
I think so. You know, I know so. And for starters, there were things I learned early that went against conventional wisdom. One was you know, in the 80s, everybody used to call it the dinner hour. Well, I happened to live in a community, you know, where I knew people were working the 3 to 11, the 11 to 7 shift. So we used to call all day long. In fact, I remember having one right after another, people who ran the call center. John says 70% of the calls are made after 5 o'clock local time, whatever the local is in California or whatever, so we'd be open until midnight. 30% of the calls before 5 p.m. local time. I remember callers saying, why? And my call center manager saying, because John wants it that way. that was good enough for me. But the point is we aimed to reach a variety of people. Secondly, this still is controversial, even though many pollsters have adopted it. I learned that party identification is a lead variable for people, meaning I was raised a Democrat, I think Democrat, even though my positions may change on issues, I filter so much of my information as a Democrat. So when I did sampling, you know, after you do a sample, you look at it to see what your distribution of your various demographics are. I considered party identification a demographic. So so I wanted to be sure that I got the proper representation of Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. My colleagues, many of them said it was a trailer variable. So some days they publish a poll with 40% Democrats, 23% Republican. That's not America. And other days they'd come back 34% Democrat, 36% Republican. So that's not America. There's a stability to party identification. But in the final analysis, I think it was the fact, and this is germane to your question about Nate Silver, is that I never brought statistical expertise into the business. I always thought of myself as a historian. I always ask questions like anticipating how I was going to analyze the response. Story? I got time for a story?
The floor is yours.
Okay. In the election of 2000, this became famous. I wrote it in book, and 60 Minutes was going to do a story on this actually, and it never happened. But in the election of 2000, that was a wacky election. You know, we were watching Gore go up and Bush go up and everything. I was polling for Reuters and for NBC News, and I called Tim Russer. He was at his son's soccer game. I called him 3 o'clock in the afternoon Saturday. He said, "What do you got?" And I said, "Well, I have Gore," this is right before the election. I said, "I've got Gore gaining, but losing in a couple of the states." He said, "Well, this is crazy. I mean, there's no pattern." I said, "You know, I've got an idea, and I'll talk to you tomorrow." So we were doing our daily polling from 3 to midnight, and then from 9 a.m. to 3. That was our 24-hour cycle the next day. And so I added a question. This year, you live in the land of Oz, and this year there's an election for mayor of Oz between the Tin Man, who's all brains and no heart, Gore, and Scarecrow, who's all heart and no brains. Who would you vote for if the election were held today? So Sunday afternoon, it's 46.2 to 46.2. And that told me everything I needed to know, which was I wasn't going to know. This election was going to be way too close to call. But I don't think a statistician would have thought of that. You had a question back there?
Oh, I was curious about your take on the state of polling today, especially in the current election cycle. This seems to be so pervasive in terms of everything seems to be driven by polling and pollsters. Even the Republican debates are driven by polling. I didn't know what your overall take was.
You know, look, there's a role for polling, and I think it keeps us grounded, but I think it goes way overboard. It determines the coverage. So you cover Donald Trump 7 and 24. He's going to come back with numbers that show, you know, that he's better known than everybody else. Why? You keep covering him, he's going to be better known than everybody else. That's kind of how it works. The notion of picking who gets to be in a debate, top 10, for example, after you go through the first 4 or 5 candidates, now you got people with 2.1%, 2.03%, 1.9%. Come on, that's absolutely insane. I mean, frankly, we'd be better served if you're going to have 17, 16, whatever candidates. We'd be better served either with a final 4 kind of matchup, or randomly select 4 people at a time and put them in a room with no moderator, just a timekeeper, and say, talk to each other for an hour. They would ask each other the kinds of questions that should be asked. They would tear each other apart the way they should be torn apart, and they'd each get a chance to say what they wanted and needed to say. And frankly, I think it would be better entertainment. Does anybody know who the moderator was at the Lincoln Douglas debates? There wasn't one, actually. That's the point. Don't need them, and you certainly don't need them trying to figure out which one of me is going to get the credit the next morning for asking the stupidest question. Yes?
One reason I have an Apple Watch is I can look at it at a glance and say, I'm not taking this unknown call, or this call I don't recognize, because I get called all the time. Is technology affecting how polling can be done?
Sure. 1984, everybody has a landline, 96% of Americans. Every 3 people we reach on the phone, 2 answer the poll, 65% response rate. And shh, I have a long distance call. Somebody's calling me from New York and asking me important calls and questions. So we have that. Nobody had an answering machine, no call waiting, nothing like that. Now the response rates are dismal, and at least half of the calls we make, when we make them by phone, we don't. Over 80% are done online now. But or at least half of the calls are on cell phones. And, you know, I don't know if anybody realizes this. Typical poll is 40, 60, 80 questions. Well, you know, you can't call anybody on a cell phone and ask questions like that. So we segued to online. We were among the pioneers of doing that. And then that's the curious, the nimble part of it. And now we do a lot of mobile to web. So I'll send you a text and say, here's a Zogby poll, click here if you want to take it. It'll take you to a secure website. You can't possibly game it. You know, it's a legitimate poll.
So what was your process for scaling up when you had to grow your company large really quickly, maintaining quality? The second part of that is, what kind of technologies did you use, or can you give some examples of some of the technologies you used to improve operating efficiency?
Yeah, okay. No, I'm just laughing because going back to 31 years, we did the New York Post 1994 election using a 486. Wow, is right, huh? You know, so scaling up for, you know, first of all, I think we had the foresight to draw a 50-mile radius around here and get in touch with every single college and say, we welcome interns, which we did. We'd have 10 to 12 a summer, 1 or 2 a semester, and contact faculty in most of the schools. Almost all of them responded. And I'm proud to say Hamilton, Colgate, Oneonta, as well as Utica and SUNY, they all responded. We got faculty as well who were specialists. Interestingly, what I learned from faculty was that, you know, we would offer a stipend. Obviously, you know, folks would take the stipend, but several of the people were saying, we just want to be able to ask questions on your polls. And that was a wonderful trade-off there. We were saving them money, you know, and saving ourselves money as well. So I don't really think I ever had a problem finding good people around here. Now, of course, it's different. What's around here? You know, around here is people in Thailand, if there's anybody in Thailand watching, you know. So now, in terms of equipment, I'm not the equipment guy, but, you know, we were able to, we did storage before most companies were doing storage. We had off-site storage and on-site storage. We built all the kinds of firewalls one could build, you know, to prevent early forms of cyber attacks and hacking. Less of a problem today because what are you going to do with polling data anyway? So much of what we do is open source. So much of what really anybody is going to be doing is open source anyway. But I had a systems department of 9 people, and each of them not only had their specialties in various hardware and software and safety and so on, but I insisted that everyone be cross-trained. Because if I always tried to think in terms of election night. What if the website crashes? What if the statistical package goes haywire? What if the worst case scenario happened at the worst possible time? And thank God we had people that could do that.
did you have to use people locally, or did you outsource anything, or hire people beyond that?
For the most part, it was local people. It was much easier to manage. But then we had a Washington office, and we had a few folks in Miami, and we had one in Dubai for a while, none of whom were local people in Washington. And we brought some people up here as well. Sometimes it worked well, and other times not so well. But it's really a whole lot different now. There's a culture of working off-site, a culture of working at home. Now, in terms of the company that my son now has, it's almost entirely virtual. But it's much smaller, and the senior team are people who've been with the company, 15, 18, 20 years. They know the drill.
Anybody else? Yeah,
Mark?
John, as a historian, as a native here, is there anything in our community's past, good or bad, that you think is important to offer as a perspective as we reimagine our future?
Oh, absolutely. For years and years, part of the local shtick of what I would talk about is how this area really was a center of the country's best ideas. So if you start, right on this corner was one of the capitals of the abolitionist movement. Where are we right now? If you go down past the insurance company there and turn left, the Yates Hotel is where Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass and all those people came and stayed for the first women's rights convention. The first trade union, industrial trade union, was right across the street from Gerber's, Mechanics Hall. So the great reform movements, this was on the eastern border of the burned over district, the great religious revivals and reform revivals, all centered right here. We need to know that, we need to touch that past, because you build your future. If you want to talk and say, no great ideas come, oh, you're so wrong. All great ideas came from here. Look at the metals and alloy businesses that were formed after World War II. Look at how, Virgil Crisafulli's, loom to boom story, our story, front cover story of Fortune magazine, the little community that had all its shit together. That wasn't the headline, but it could have been. We made a wonderful transition, which is what we're doing now. When I talk to communities and they tell us we have this terrible refugee problem, man, we've got this wonderful refugee problem, and they have stores. There are 75 Latino-owned businesses in the city now. That may not seem like a lot, but there was 0 10 years ago. That's quite a trajectory. So learn that past, and learn also that when we talk about nanotechnology, it's only a logical progression from Samuel F.B. Morse, who got his first license here in Utica to operate the telegraph. All the way through to the United Press International, to all the stuff that they're doing out there at the base and are doing more of. This is a vibrant community. More people have to know that, because that vibrance builds on vibrance. And I might say this is a pretty decent arts community as well. If you look at my buddy Richard Florida's Creative Class Index, it's fairly impressive for a small town. Fairly impressive. I think only getting better as the schools grow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Obviously, when you first started, Zogby and Associates, you probably wore a million different hats. You were doing a million different things. how did you determine which hats to pass off when hiring new employees, especially in those early years? And how did you evaluate and get quality employees who are gonna, do what you paid them to do?
Okay, good. The first thing that went was finance. I had no head for that whatsoever. But you see, I was fortunate that I had either taught full-time or adjunct at all of the local schools, and so I had professors who were good friends. I also had students, because I did continue to teach, run the business and teach adjunct, and so I saw and found talent. I hired people who were students of mine. And so that was one thing. It's hard to devolve. There's some things that I really liked doing. And so it was sometimes a little bit hard giving those up. But, and look, I swung and missed too. There were people who just didn't fit into the culture, didn't fit in with someone who could be very difficult to work with. There were corpses on the road along the way. On the other hand, I really just didn't have a problem finding decent talent, but also nice people. We kind of avoided, the Harvard, Yale sort of thing. They always came and did internships, but it was very important that people were nice and that they worked as a team. Now, I'll tell you, in terms of horror stories, I told you we had 9 people in our systems department, the quants and the statistical people. They were all, I came up with the idea, let's house them all in the systems department. They created their own culture, and they were assholes. I mean, they were terrible, and they were bullies. There were 9 guys, and we'd have people coming in who, from editorial, from marketing, and there was just this attitude in systems. And I remember I was sitting on a plane, I was flying from Chicago back home, and I called my chief of staff. And I said, you know what, I got an idea. Bust up systems. Bust them up. Keep 2 in that big room and take the other 7 and distribute them. Have them sit across from editorial and from marketing. Oh my God, you could hear the wailing and the screaming. And how dare he do that? You know what though? The attitude just died right there. Now they had to work with other people and look at it.
How would you handle that situation working with a remote team?
Boy, that's a very, very good one. There have got to be teamwork skills, so one way is projects. Another way maybe, and this is an old man talking now, one way is to have a running game and have them playing a running game. I mean a video game, where they're developing teamwork and where they're developing those kinds of decisions where they need each other. I think there are ways to do it, and I think that there are folks that know either gaming theory or teamwork building a whole lot better under, a different kind of model, but it can be done. That's where the old guy goes to the younger guy for mentoring. That makes sense to you?
It does.
The short answer is yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
It seems like it's just like an ongoing issue. I think a lot of people have their own teams have it.
Look, I had it too. We let some people work from home. Oh my God, the wailing. Why do they work at home and I don't get to work at home? And then there were those who worked at home who worked and those who worked at home that didn't work. So it doesn't change. There are those who came in that didn't work. There was the best writer I ever had, Will Daly. We'd have a morning staff meeting at 9. Will never came. He finally said to me, he said, I just can't get up. He said, can I work can I come in at 11 o'clock at night? I said, yeah, you know what? It's worth trying. That's when he was best and when he was productive. And who am I to argue? So some people just aren't built that way. I don't, of course today I have cameras, right? But I don't know what he was doing except he was getting his writing done and it was beautiful. That's all I care about.
Well, I think that's, oh, go.
And no-
I can steal a second.
Yeah.
And no supplies were missing, yeah.
So now in your position, kind of with where you are, if you could go back and change your educational background, would you change any of that schooling? And my second question is, now today with where you are, do you still do things to educate yourself as far as reading or courses, or do you do anything, or so what do you do?
Okay. I wouldn't change anything. If anything were to rival the history major, I would have taken a whole lot more literature. Remember, we're studying people. And I tell young people, get involved in a campaign. That's not simply advice for a political consultant. That's for somebody in marketing and management and so on. I explained that right from the get-go. Read novels. That's where you get character development and you really learn about people. And you also learn, I'm not the only person going through this, that other people are too. Now, what would what do I do? I have a day book and a night book. I read novels at night, and I read nonfiction during the day. Try to stay on top of things. I read The Economist. And then I begin my day with Drudge, the Huffington Post, and Real Clear Politics. And then I sort of don't know where it goes from there. It's aggregated and whatever. But The Economist is steady reading. And then I always have a nonfiction book. And generally it's about the future. That's my interest.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
Thank
for
you.
taking time. Thank you guys for showing up. I really appreciate it. We're hoping this is the second in what I hope is going to be a long series of these kinds of things. So thanks for coming out on a Tuesday night and supporting what we're slowly building and trying to do here. So,
Yeah, thank you.
thanks, guys.
Oh, thanks. This is how I work.
You too. Bye.
See you later. Thanks for coming out.
How are you?
I know.
So we're on.